In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, Marco's going to breathe fire with dragons, and we're going to get all 3D in our X's next. Welcome back, my fine brothers and sisters, to yet another wonderful episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks live stream. We're live. We're not Memorex. Marco's here. He's kind of like The Walking Dead currently, unfortunately, but he's been hard at work. How you doing, buddy?
I'm still breathing. I'm okay.
You look chipper. You look good. You look good for a guy that's been through the ringer.
Poor guy just had a brain aneurysm. It looked terrible.
What are you talking about?
Oh my God, I'm all scruffy. I'm completely shocked, but it's all good.
Oh, the scruff is in these days, brother. You know, we're all saving on razors. Chris is definitely saving on razors. Look at him. Chris Kringle is what he looks like.
I mean, you still gotta like shave around and stuff, but it does help for sure.
Yeah. So, been a while. Sorry, we're slightly tardy on getting back to you folks with some coverage on the live stream here, but we've been hard at work. The elves have been hard at work on toys for good girls and boys, and lots of interesting stuff firing up these days. Innovation and intelligence of the artificial kind is hockey sticking up and to the right,
Haunting me.
And yes, haunting Chris. Actually, taunting or haunting? Or
haunting, I guess both. I mean, being AI has already erased me from existence. So I went on one of my articles and was asking it about it and asked who wrote this article. And it put Marco's name instead of mine, even though I was clearly on the byline. AI erasure. I demand reparations.
Yeah, well, your robot overlords probably they don't care that much for whatever needs to be repaired. Brian Caldo says, Dave, please tell us you're drinking a Dragon's Mead tonight to go along with the topic. Actually, it's close. I'm actually drinking a Stone Delicious IPA. Delicious, which no, it has a gargoyle on it. A gargoyle.
Gotcha.
Which is somewhere around the Dragon's Mead area, at least, Marco. The heck's
okay,
wrong?
Understood.
Chris, you drinking anything sudsy and bubbly and cold, kid?
Yeah, I'm just enjoying a nice regular Sam Adams. So haven't had one in ages.
The Samuel Adams from Boston, don't you know? A patriot that he is.
Was missing New England a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just drinking a cold one, little beer 30 time here, folks, because that's what we do on Wednesdays at 5:30 East Coast. Gentlemen, anything exciting going on besides the munchkins in the background, Marco?
Everything embargoed. So yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to point over there.
I've got something that arrived today that I was just going to show off to Marco that most everyone else probably won't care about. But
do it.
Oh, he got new camera gear. Oh, the green screen is set up. Boy. Looking nice.
So I was using like one of those hanging frames with just a really jank green wrinkled cloth before. And just having this pop up from the ground and be able to stash it away is going to be very, very nice.
I didn't
zoom out my camera a little right before the stream, so it's not quite dialed in. But
fix the crop. But tell you, that was impressive the way the whole splash just came behind you. Like
it almost makes that Canon autofocus worth it. It's almost okay.
Hey, come on, Canon autofocus. I like the bokeh blur in the foreground too, because
totally
we
kidding.
need the softening.
Totally kidding.
What I need is the 35 millimeter, because the 51.8 I was using before, I got a stand as well that actually attaches to my desk, so I don't have to use the full tripod. But with the 50 mil, it's slightly too close. So I'm using my 24-105 right now at around 35 mil.
See that over there, right?
So how far away is that? How far away is your camera right now?
Me?
Can you touch it? Chris, can you touch your camera right now or no?
The lens hood is just at finger length.
And you're at 24 millimeters?
35.
Oh, okay. See, that's crazy. I'm at no, I'm at 50 equivalent. That's why it's farther away. Never mind. I'm an idiot.
Yeah,
That's not true.
If I was like another 6 inches back, I could probably get away with 50 mil, but
Yep.
not quite.
Well,
I could put my 17 on the camera, but then you see all the mess that's just out of camera shot here.
I just can't believe he let a comment about an extra 6 inches get passed without saying something.
I'm almost touching the RGB on that. That's the Aurora. I'm almost touching my Aurora. And the Borealis would be the lights, the northern lights. Anyways, that's an Alienware Aurora. That's already been reviewed. So that's what I had going on. I've got other things here too. Laptops from HP. What can I tell you? I guess that's about it. We're going to build a gaming rig with main gear tomorrow, though, in New Jersey.
I've got my new rig pretty much dialed in now.
Beautiful.
So I did get the 12BH power dedicated connector from Corsair to clean that setup. I did end up swapping the AIO, so I now have the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2 240 ARGB. That's running much better, much cooler than that old Corsair cooler I had crammed in there before.
Cool.
Yeah. So
very cool. Well, yeah, folks. I don't think we're going to be streaming live tomorrow, but do stick around. In the near future, we will have a special build episode with our buddies at Main Gear Computers coming up. We're going to be building an all AMD rig. It will be a Ryzen 9 7950X3D, Radeon RX 7900 XTX, and lots of other amazing things, and built in a really cool shop. So
with really cool guys.
With really cool guys, some good friends of ours, the boys at Main Gear. We're partial to those boys because they build good stuff with lots of love. But
So if you're going to buy a pre-built, they build the right kind of pre-built where it usually has that touch that you can't easily DIY yourself unless you're like one of those crazy psycho modders that really puts in the work with, the automotive grade paint and everything else that they put in their systems.
Marco is a crazy modder.
I used to be.
Yeah. So let's dig in without further ado and talk a little bit about what we've got going on the hot hardware coverage that's been interesting the past couple of weeks. There's some really good stuff. Nevin's got a question. Will we ever get 3D models of processors on laptops due to efficiency and performance at 1080p and 1440p resolutions? 3D cache is ideal for laptops. Interesting commentary. We'll talk about that shortly.
Go ahead. Now, say AMD hasn't committed. There's probably some additional challenges for the smaller notebook form factor.
Yep.
But when you consider
it's probably going to come. Yeah, I think it's going to come at someday. Like in a gaming notebook, like the Dragon Range notebook we're going to talk about later. No one expects long battery life in a machine like that. So who cares if it shaves a few minutes off, off the battery life if you get a huge boost in gaming performance. So we'll see what the future holds.
And we'll have to dig into that in a little bit. But what's very interesting about the processor we'll be talking about later, the 7800 X3D from AMD, is the power consumption of that thing. Now, that's the desktop variant, obviously a very different thermal envelope, but power consumption is a strong suit. So who knows? Maybe
all in due time.
All in due time. Yes. All right. Well, let's start with some GTC highlights, GPU Technology Conference highlights. We'll kick this around a little bit because the folks at Nvidia were out in full force, including Jensen in his leather jacket as usual. Looking svelte there, by the way. It looks like he trimmed up and he's got a fresh haircut, looking sharp. Nvidia GTC 2023.
It's amazing what that AI will do.
Yeah. AI everywhere all at once. That's what we said. There was a lot to cover there, from Grace Hopper to new DGX supercomputers for AI, new interconnect technology with NVLink, higher speed, and just, lots of stuff for machine learning, which this company is what I like to refer to now as the 800-pound gorilla in AI. If you look at what they power in the cloud, from recommender engines to natural language processing, you name it, ChatGPT is powered by Nvidia Hopper GPUs and A100 Ampere GPUs on Azure, specifically Microsoft Azure. This company is the premier AI powerhouse currently, and for some very interesting reasons, which we should chat about, how they got there and where they're going. But before I mouth off too much, Marco, what did you think about all that?
So, as usual, I shouldn't say as usual. GTC is always full of NVIDIA news, but holy crap, did they go insane this year. There was so much news, even the multiple articles we have posted across various channels. It's like the tip of the surface of some of the crazier stuff. There was so much news out of GTC. It's crazy. But, Dave makes a good point, right? AI is everywhere right now. It's such a hot topic. It's being infused into virtually every industry. And, NVIDIA's chips, they just kill it in a variety of AI metrics. You might hear news of a particular processor here and there that wins in one very specific slice of a very specific type of computation, or, a specific benchmark. But the variety of tools NVIDIA has available, with the wide breadth of high performance, with the wide range of options, they're just killing it across the board.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. It's actually a fascinating story that folks that have been in this sector of ours, if you haven't been around long enough, you might not be aware how this came to pass. But, years and years ago, dare I say decades, or a decade ago at least anyways, NVIDIA came out with this thing called CUDA, and it allowed essentially GPU compute, or compute workloads on GPU, and
highly parallel.
Highly parallelized workloads. It's a programming language for NVIDIA GPUs, and they figured out that it does this highly parallelized matrix math stuff for AI algorithms, machine learning algorithms really well, and so they just seeded academia, AI researchers, kids in college that were studying and developing these algorithms. They seeded them with the software and even some GPUs. Remember, Jensen used to show up at GTC and pass out big GPUs, big honking machine learning GPUs to academia all the time. And when they were doing it face to face. And so that was sort of a stroke of brilliance, a Johnny Appleseed sort of effect, as I like to call it. And,
you know where they learned that? Good old Texas Instruments.
Oh,
passing out the calculators and making sure that the teachers use it, and it's in all the textbooks. And CUDA kind of followed a similar route, where if you're in computer science, you're going to learn CUDA.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly what happened. And they are, sort of the de facto GPU now for machine learning. And, just that sort of stroke of brilliance back in the day that kind of flew under the radar has worked out for them and paid in spades. There was some other announcements there that I thought were really interesting and could have meaningful impact in NVIDIA's bottom line moving forward. But any takeaways from you, Chris, that before we move on?
I mean, I feel with a lot of the big iron hardware that they showed off, we've kind of seen it or have been expecting it already. So, in terms of, obviously it's very cool, very powerful stuff, but it's not like the exciting new thing. But I think what you want to get into next is far more fascinating. At least it was the most fascinating part I took away from it. But as you said, there was just a barrage of information in the keynote and all the other panels and sessions they had. So,
yeah, I'm going to drop a couple links in the chat. We had some a great little piece from Ben Funk, who looked at NVIDIA Jetson Orin Nano, the little robotics single board computers. Well, they're more like multi-board computers because they have a little MES module now on the top. But yeah, and so he's programming the thing to, do machine vision and machine learning, a la robots like you see there in the factory there. And it's fascinating stuff. I mean, he's able to actually educate the machine in the application he was doing. Marco, remind me what that application was. I know you edited that story.
I don't remember the name of NVIDIA's specific app. I can go get it, but essentially what it was doing, he did multiple, right? One was to explaining how to identify people, and then another was explaining. So this particular platform Ben tested was more specifically geared for robotics, right? So the application that he trained was to detect. So he gave an example: if there was a robot, traversing a warehouse floor or a factory floor, you want it to be able to detect people walking around, not bump into them. Initially, the model wasn't really picking up sneakers or shoes particularly well. So he retrained the model on some additional data. Boom, next thing you know, it can now make out the shoes. And now you have a much more accurate, realistic depiction of where the person and their feet are to be detected. So very, very cool stuff. Like I love seeing Ben do this kind of stuff for us.
Yeah, he's a software developer by day, works on some fun stuff with us by night. There he is in his garage or some sort of warehouse with his daughter in the background, and the machine is recognizing people legs and figures, and that's pretty cool stuff, man. The other thing that was cool that NVIDIA came out with that was an announcement I didn't see coming, and I don't think, Marco, you did either. We've worked with a few companies now that are into AI for chip design. So NVIDIA announced this technology called cuLitho. You can detect the CUDA on the preamble of that name, cuLitho, and it's CUDA, for lithography. And lithography, if you're familiar with chip design, is actually the physical, well, not the physical, but the light photo mask on a wafer that patterns the chip on the wafer. There you go. There's a good explanation of it right there in pictures. Says 1,000 words. So what cuLitho does, this is a very compute intensive process. It takes, a server room or server rooms, data centers, to make these photo masks, the mask sets for chips. It takes a ton of horsepower. And what cuLitho does, as you might expect, is accelerates it on, you guessed it, NVIDIA GPUs. And so if you think about this, TSMC, by the way, stepped out, the world's largest chip fab in Taiwan, and ASML, one of the world's largest semiconductor equipment manufacturers, stepped out in support of this as well. They're adopting it, and it's going to save a ton of resources and accelerate chip lithography. And you also realize that it's going to be a big NVIDIA GPU demand gen engine, because now you have data centers powered with GPUs designing chips and doing the lithography on chips. Man, I mean, they look like they're poised to kill it again, right, Marco?
Yeah, absolutely. So like AI, as I mentioned earlier, it's being kind of infused everywhere. There's a couple EDA tools providers that are incorporating AI to accelerate place and route, to accelerate validation testing, and other areas of chip design that used to take engineers, many hours, many weeks, what have you, and letting the AI do it and accelerating it, 10-fold, 18-fold, what have you. So these huge productivity gains and reducing the amount of time it takes to get the results that a manufacturer is looking for. And when I say results, I mean, power, area, and performance, right? And now this stage from NVIDIA, when it goes to actually making the chip, now that's being accelerated as well. So this is all really great stuff. And essentially everybody wants everything quicker and faster. So it's a good bet that cuLitho is going to catch on And we're going to see this progress and evolve as we hit more advanced nodes. And NVIDIA is going to do really well because of it.
Yeah. It's kind of a no-brainer when you think about it. We work with a company by the name of Synopsys, does machine learning or AI accelerated place and route. So actually optimizing the design of a chip on a wafer for area, power, and performance, silicon area, power, and performance. It is the new thing. AI, developing chips to power your AI, more AI. It's kind of an inception moment almost, but why not have the machine do the grunt work, right? Like place and route and lithography and whatnot is grunt work that, if the machine can do it, let it churn away. It works 24/7, doesn't get tired, and humans can go do more creative things, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, there you have it. I mean, that's sort of a quick little turbo shot at Nvidia GTC, which was a couple of weeks ago, and interesting stuff. Fascinating company. I've got bets on them, no question about it. Full disclosure, I have a long position in Nvidia because I just think they're going places. But we're fortunate to work with a lot of companies that are going places, and the technology is just. Every year we get more impressed, right? It's like, wow, we're doing that now. It's good
Very
stuff.
different, very different than the early days. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Very different. All right. Well, I think we should keep moving, right? All right, Chris, I think you're on deck because we're going to shift gears to something a little bit more mainstream, I guess, maybe. And talk about the Samsung Galaxy Book 3 Pro 360 review that you did. Great perf, superb OLED. I'll drop a link in the chat. And man, I tell you what, Samsung with the delicious OLED displays that they are known for, they make an impression. What were yours of this one, Chris?
Oh, very, very good. So the Galaxy Book Pro series has been using OLED displays for all 3 generations, but this generation got a very nice upgrade with it because it's not using a 60 hertz panel anymore. It's their AMOLED 2 that has a 120 hertz refresh rate. So you get that extra smoothness and responsiveness. It punches up to around 500 nits. So for an OLED panel, that's pretty bright. And it just looks really, really nice. It's very consistent edge to edge, and really nice to work with. Aesthetically speaking, it seems very similar to the past Galaxy Book Pro 360 designs, but it is a little different. So this now uses a 16:10 aspect ratio display. It's a little taller, and they took some of that height into expanding out. Well, not just the display, but also, if I can get down here, the trackpad. So it now has an absolutely enormous trackpad, 6 inches across, I think 4.25 inches deep. Like, it's very, very large, and they've positioned it perfectly so that your palms don't hit it as you're typing. It's just that slight offset, but it's really, really good. Of course, it has the glass surface. It tracks really well.
Wait, Chris, can I interrupt you 1 second? You said 6 inches wide and 4.5 inches deep. Okay, gotcha. Just making sure.
Yep.
Jeez.
You're familiar with those dimensions, right?
I was just getting clarity. I missed this question.
Hey, let me. How's the palm rejection with that thing? And no relation, Marco. Oh my God! Seriously, that's a serious question.
Palms are not a concern.
Okay.
So with the trackpad, I didn't trip it up
could be in the way
at all. Like I said, the way your hands rest on it, on the rest, you don't really touch it anyways. But even if you do, no issue there.
Cool. Got
with
a numpad too.
Yes, they do squeeze a numpad in there. The rest of the keyboard is virtually full size keys, so you're not shrinking it down at all. The numpad is shrunk just a tiny bit, But it's better to have it in there that way than not at all for a lot of folks who are doing data entry.
Hey, Marco's wife thought that was funny.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it does have a touch display as well. Of course, it works with the S Pen that is included. I was just going to show another shot of the trackpad to show it's literally larger than a Pixel 7. Like if you like large trackpads, there you go. But
how's the display? What's res on that OLED panel?
So it's
1080.
It's not 1080.
Well, 16 by 10 is be 1200.
I want to say it's 3440 by 1800.
Oh, so it's 4K.
Not quite 4K-ish. 2880 by 1800.
2K-ish. Got it.
Yeah, it's about 2.5 times the pixels of 1080p, and
I like that.
4K is like another 1.5x or something like that. I have it in the article.
That's a great in between res. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, it's really, really great display there. And it does include the S Pen. So if, unlike me, you are artistically gifted, you can use it for drawing. If you're me, you can use as I'm losing control of the page. There we go. If you are me, there is in the Pen app that's included, there's a coloring book option, and you can use the bucket tool and you can fill in colors. That's about my limit, but it does work very well, and it's very, very satisfying. And if you want to get in there and draw everything, you can. If you want to create your own original artworks, you can. It has a lot of built-in apps, kind of an insane amount. So this is the ScreenWrite application that you can bring up with the pen and take a screenshot, notate on it. So if you're walking someone through how to do something or whatever, you can quickly do that. The main software angle that Samsung positions this with is, besides the S Pen, is the phone sync. It's in a lot of their marketing material, which is great. It's handy to be able to use that kind of
link to
experience.
Windows.
But it's the Microsoft Phone Link app that you can use on pretty much any Windows computer at this point. There are some features if you have a Galaxy phone or Galaxy Tab that will let you do a little bit more with it. So you get a little bit better contextual awareness between devices with a Samsung phone. And you can also use a Samsung Tab as a second display.
Ah, cool.
So if you're on the road and you have that with you, maybe watch some movies on the tablet on the plane, and then when you're working wherever you get to, you can set up and have another screen. So that is potentially a really handy feature for a lot of road warriors, especially. So it's, aside from the sheer number of applications, which a lot of them are redundant. So if you go in here, everything with a red box around it is coming from Samsung, and it's not quite half the applications that come with Windows, but it's pretty close up there. And I think that they would do well to trim that back a bit. But it's a lot like their Galaxy phone experience, in my opinion, where they have a lot of apps that are duplicating what Google's provided for apps and aren't strictly necessary if they're not doing something really unique and different. Now, the S Pen apps, great, fantastic. Those are good for the device. Refining that phone link experience is a good thing. But, pick your strengths and stick to them. And if Windows is already doing something, already has a video editor, for example, or it has the snipping tool built in, just use those built-in tools that aren't going to confuse your users.
Agreed. How's the 13th gen performance in that? That's one of the early 13th gen machines we've gotten in.
So the performance
the
in
lower
it
power ones
is the P suffixed chips.
Right.
So off the rip, we have a speedometer, which isn't really a brute force benchmark by any means, but it does give you a sense of the responsiveness. It's a lot of little bursty workloads. So the 1360p Core i7 clocks very well. And you see it just kind of burst right ahead of the rest of the field that we've tested. In raw performance, it's definitely up there. There are stronger mobile chips from AMD in just pure multi-core compute. But when you look at the single core, which a lot of applications that you'd be using this device for are going to be more dependent on, it delivers the strongest single core performance. And I think that carries across into Geekbench as well. So, for the way you want to use this device, it's very well tuned and very performant. Very happy with that. Now, it doesn't have a discrete GPU. It's using the Intel Iris Xe graphics. And you're not going to see that it's reinvented really anything there. Yes, it's the top of that pack, more or less. I mean, the Acer Swift 3 gets a little lead here. Not the case in every test. But it's the same Iris Xe graphics that they've been using for a few generations now. So would like to see that improved, but that's not Samsung's fault by any measure. That's more a place where Intel needs to shore up its mobile chips, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Agreed. Good stuff there, Chris. That's a nice machine in it, and it's still only 16-inch machine, and it's still only what, 3.5 pounds, I think.
Yeah, I think something about there. And then just gonna bring up the last bit is the battery life, which is good, and it is beat out by a few devices, but they all have 1080p class displays. 1200p is slightly taller, but it's still basically 1080p versus the much higher resolution OLED panel here. It's keeping up. I think it had a 78 watt hour battery, so a little on the larger size, but very respectful for the form factor. It's very, very quiet under operation, and it doesn't get hot.
Nice.
So good experience, really great experience. I think Paul Lilly calls the Galaxy Book series the best kept secret in laptops. He really likes these.
Nice. Yeah, good stuff. That's great performance, actually, from Intel 13th gen. Good performance in battery life and good thermals. So, I mean, you can't really argue there. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Marco, any thoughts before we move on?
No, really cool machine. Like, I have to make an admission, like, basically my entire adult life, I've had a proclivity for really tiny notebooks. I have traveled with 11.6 inch tiny notebooks. Currently, I have a 13-inch notebook that, that's my road horse. And having tested some of these larger notebooks lately, I think I'm shifting gears a little. So something like that, where it's a nice big 16-inch screen but remains thin and light, I would give that some serious attention.
Yeah. If you're going to use it in the full convertible flip around 2-in-1, the 16-inch size can be a little bit to get used to, just because there's so much inertia as it flips around, but it's so lightweight at the same time that it's not that big of a deal. There's certainly been other devices we've tested in that category and size that have felt a lot more clumsy in that regard. If you're just using it as a clamshell laptop, no complaints at all.
Yeah, I think the 360-degree swing hinge in a machine that size, granted you've got a stylus there to do the tablet thing with and all that to draw on. By the way, that's an OLED 2K OLED touch display with pen stylus support. So you are getting some additional features there. It's also not a inexpensive machine. We'll talk about that before we close on it. But yeah, I think, a lot of times what's great about a 360-degree swing hinge like that, a convertible like that, in that size, is that you can position the display kind of any way you want. It's great for standing over it at the counter in the kitchen, and you need to tilt a display up a little bit further. You just get, more choice of viewing angle. So, I think it's a good thing,
especially a use case like if you're someone who does a lot of math by hand, a lot of algebra or something like that too, working with just a computer and trying to do algebra with just a keyboard and mouse is not a fun experience. But if you can quickly flip your laptop around and jot down your equations, it makes a world of difference, and you don't have to be reaching for that pad of paper or anything else as well. There's a lot of use for it outside of just the artistic stuff. Now, I do see a comment asking how hot it runs compared to the 7950X, or
he's referencing the 7800X. We're not there yet.
Okay, I was going to say this is a laptop, but
yeah,
this runs nice and cool. So yeah, we'll get to the 7800X 3D, no question.
Let's take a step back to our previous segment, and thanks, Chris. That's cool stuff. Check out the review at Hot Hardware. Let me drop it one more time in the chat for y'all. Chris's hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, with probably just the blood and sweat minus the tears. The Galaxy Book 3 Pro 360 from Samsung. You should check that out. Good stuff. Price MSRP for that model?
So this is listed at $1,699, so $1,700, which kind of sounds expensive for the configuration, but again, you're getting that 120 hertz OLED display, the S Pen support, the convertible, and a really premium build with it. So, if you're just looking for value, there's other places to go. But if you want the premium experience, a really nice laptop, I think it is justifiable. And being Samsung, they also do run a lot of trade-in offers as well. So in particular, their phone trade-in offers are better than the laptop trade-in offers I was looking at, surprising enough.
Cool. Very good. Let's click back, as I mentioned real quick, to a question that came in, because this is good stuff. Nevin asks, or Nevin, I don't know how you'd say that, but I'm going to say Nevin. With the increased use of artificial intelligence in manufacturing, will it only affect yield, or will it also lead to a reduction in product prices? Excellent question. If you think about it, well, let's see. If you think about it from a lithography standpoint, like Kulitho with Nvidia, absolutely. Now you're talking about a step in the manufacturing chain that, time is money, and, server resources are money. If you talk about more like place and route, like what Synopsys does, and some of these other EDA tools design companies, designing chips, you're talking about minimizing R&D. Eventually it shakes out to lower costs downstream, but really cutting R&D costs, I guess it does equate to pricing eventually, for sure. But recouping R&D, I don't know if that's right out of the gate or not. Probably is. But more immediate would be the manufacturing lines, I think. Go ahead,
there's a huge additional wrinkle there to consider, though.
Okay.
What most of the customers are finding that use the AI tools for the chip design is they are achieving a better result than the initial target. So if you have a market segment target or a performance target for a particular chip, and you find with the AI that all of a sudden you have exceeded your target, it may perhaps put this product into a different segment where you may want to charge more. So there's lots of stuff to consider. Generally speaking, once this is widespread, it will, as Dave mentions, it'll probably result in a cost reduction for the chip makers, but where the final product lands, that's going to be all over the map.
Well, it's going to be all over the map, and also, you're talking about the trade-off between enabling better performance, more capability, and then also again, the thing with, for example, with Synopsys's take on it, and Cadence does this now as well, another design tools company. When you optimize for silicon real estate, you also save cost. So, the bottom line is, better, faster, theoretically cheaper, but probably more capability, I think.
Well, I don't think the companies would be pursuing if it didn't help their profits. And lowering the costs gives you more potential to make your profits, even if your end product isn't really increasing or decreasing in cost for the consumers to see. It's still helping the companies, which eventually could maybe create a more competitive landscape where we could see lower prices as more companies have access to these high-end tools because of the democratization.
Time to market, and better competitive landscape. You can think of all the different benefits.
It's cheaper than not being able to do it.
Well, yeah, that and if you're a smaller, scrappier, underdog player that doesn't have the resources, now the AI is an equalizer. So there's lots of different wrinkles to it. Marco's absolutely right. It's very nuanced, and will be fun to watch. I will say that because yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Great question, big guy, big Nevin. Good job, or lady. I'm not sure. And let's see. Flood of Sins. TV didn't kill the radio star. Radio GPT did. Okay. Well, I don't think Radio GPT is going to kill the radio star, actually, because that's one thing that the AI doesn't really have that humans have, and that's soul. You have creativity, you can do some amazing stuff and technically, impressive, but soul is a very human thing. So
bold of you to assume I have a soul.
Chris doesn't have a soul.
We know Chris does. We could probably kill an hour discussing this, but I just got back from an event where AI was basically the topic of everything. Right, I spent a couple of days out in California, and AI was talked about in many different regards. And what struck me was, people thought, oh, AI is going to take jobs, these low-level jobs, and the really skilled workers, and people are safe. Meanwhile, I'm at an event where the AI is taking jobs from from chip makers, right? Some of the smartest people in the world, right? And now this part is really shady.
Is it taking jobs? But
really, well, it's not now, right? But if you can now do right now, there's 3 stages, right? Probably more, but 3 stages of the design pipeline where multiple engineers can technically be replaced by AI, right? So eventually the teams designing chips are going to shrink. Hopefully they get to just be more creative and we get better chips, but that's a whole different discussion. But now going to the creative side, is it really creating something and having a soul? Not really. It's stealing all of our work to create art or to give you little summaries on a topic. But some of the output's really good. So
yeah, but everything humans make is derivative anyway.
Yeah, that's not really true. Derivative is one thing. It's different to steal, and the models are trained on all of our stuff.
It's not, so I don't know about stealing. We're feeding the machine. It's not stealing it. But go ahead.
Well, if somebody,
the people training the machine are getting their data from somewhere, and they're not always getting it in the most legitimate means.
I can convince David Stealing and right now, right? If you use ChatGPT or Bard and you ask a question on something technical and it used us as a source and it's completely buried under a link that you have to click to find where the source was, but somebody got there and
screwed that up. But go ahead.
There's no human doing that. It's the AI that created output based on a question using data from articles like ours, and the user got all of this information that was ours originally. That's kind of shady. That. Yeah, that's
shady. Well, it's shady. It's shady in the way it's represented. The human failed to not give proper citation, to link, prominently, all that stuff. The AI is just spitting out what you're asking of it. It doesn't.
I'm talking the AI. Like, so if a person asks a question now, eyeballs that would have made it onto something we created will never make it there anymore because the answer was provided by the chatbot,
Right. And and I actually saw an interview with Satya Nadella on that, with the CEO of Microsoft, and it's very interesting. You make a good point. In their case, and Satya was definitely tap dancing a bit. When you fire up ChatGPT and Bing search and you see the results and the answer's there for you, or even if you say, hey, Google, tell me this, and the answer's there for you, it needs to be well linked and all that good stuff, and give proper citation. Do humans actually go drill into that beyond the answer? No, they don't. So yeah, I guess it's.
But the issue is these are language models. It doesn't actually understand what it's writing. It's doing a predictive analysis of what words go together that would most likely be given as the correct answer, but it doesn't have the concept of, oh, this is a fact. This is something that needs to be cited. Other
vetted.
Than Right. So, I think we give a lot more credit to the intelligence of AI than they deserve right now, when
It's
really
machine learning.
it's statistics.
It's machine learning statistics. I'm not sure it's necessarily artificial. I mean, when you look at generative AI, it's still pulling on something, but at least it's generating something. I don't know. We could go on for hours, but it's
we got to.
It's
We
wild
definitely
stuff.
got to move on.
Yeah, we should move on. We only got a few minutes left, like 15 to be exact. But no, I think it's a fascinating situation. I think, Marco, your point about taking jobs. I wonder. I think when you talk about saving resources on grunt work design kind of stuff, or grunt work stuff that the machine can do with a very iterative process. Hopefully, the goal is that the AI saves us time and energy that we can put elsewhere to
That
do
energy
things
is
better.
a big one. We need to be considerate
green.
of how much energy it's burning every time Bing is popping up an answer automatically that you don't care about in the sidebar.
There you go.
Moving on.
AI can't even draw hands yet. And Nevin, you're a male from Croatia. Good to meet you, brother. Cool. So let's keep moving then. Let's talk about we got to really move, actually, because we spent way too much time on AI. But let's talk about Dragon Range and the Asus ROG Strix Scar 17 review that Marco fired up this week. He's been a busy boy. We've given him no rest. Dragon Range breathes fire. So now we have an AMD Ryzen 9 7945HX, 16-core CPU, 32 threads, 55-watt processor, 55-watt TDP. This is a gaming notebook with an RTX 4090 mobile GPU on it. Oh, my goodness. And it still weighs in at something like 6.5 pounds. Not too bad. Thoughts, Marco? Were you impressed?
More than impressed, right? This machine is nuts. Yeah, so cool. For years, Intel has just been the dominant player in mobile, and the last couple generations, AMD just really sticking it to them as hard as they can and making more and more inroads. Now, for the last year and a half or so, been really spoiled. I got to check out top end Intel 12th gen 17-inch gaming class notebooks from MSI packed to the gills. I got to check out the Razer Blade 16 packed to the gills with 13th gen, and they were a massive leap over the previous generation gaming notebooks that we've tested. Not in terms of battery life, right, but in terms of performance, just massive. And the companies have really put time into the designs to refine the designs, just make them nicer overall. So when I got my hands on this, I had some really high-end reference platforms to consider. This notebook kicked ass, though. So the Ryzen 9 7945HX is a 16-core, 32-thread chip. It's effectively similar to a 7950 on the desktop, just in a different package and a different power envelope. It's a 55-watt TDP, but obviously it can turbo much higher than that when there's thermal headroom available. And what you'll see, so I got to back up one more second. This particular Asus ROG Strix Scar 17-inch notebook, although it's in the same class, let's say, of the MSI Titan GT77HX we looked at recently, it's much thinner and lighter, right? It's not quite the size of a Razer Blade 16, but it is more manageable than something really big like the Titan GT77. So when you don't have a lot of room to work with, the thermals are obviously much more constrained in a notebook. I came in like expecting it to do well, but it did more than well, right? So the GTX 4090 had much more breathing room than something like the Razer Blade, and it blew the Razer Blade's graphics performance out of the water. In the CPU tests, it traded blows in the single-threaded tests and dominated the multi-threaded tests versus Intel's 13950HX. Haven't tested a 13980HX, but it's not going to be massively faster than the 13950. Now, it's Intel 24 cores versus AMD 16 cores, but it's 32 threads versus 32 threads. AMD's 32 threads in mobile are simply putting out more horses. It offered much better performance in stuff like Cinebench and Pavre, and that killer multi-thread performance helps in digital content creation. Something like PC Mark, it ends up at the top of the chart. So
and
really,
PC Mark is one where there's often not a lot of difference between systems. It can be very hit or miss, but that's a very clear victory. That's like astonishing to see.
Right. And the other thing to consider with this particular test, right, it's not a desktop where we can have the exact same configuration across the board. That MSI Titan GT77,
that's a big boat.
It has 64 gigs and dual PCIe Gen 4 drives in RAID 0, right? So, and more thermal headroom. So the Titan does win by a little bit in purely, graphics intensive tests where all of the thermal headroom is getting used in the cooler.
Yeah.
But all around, this Asus notebook is excellent. AMD did a really good job with Dragon Range, and whatever, it's paired to Nvidia. It's not AMD plus AMD, but at the ultra high end, and that's where it's Nvidia right now for ultra high end graphics and mobile. And this is just a really nice notebook. If you're looking for a killer gaming notebook, or gaming laptop, I should say, this one's definitely one to consider. It's a really nice machine.
Desktop replacement, workhorse, and gaming powerhouse. Wow, cool. Very cool.
So I got to pop a question up from Steve's. He's asking what we do with all the
good
notebooks.
Question, man. Yeah.
Most of them, unfortunately, have to go back, right?
Makes retesting really difficult.
Yeah, yes, that's why, like, I kind of pointed out in some of the tests, like speedometer is one. Everybody wants to know how fast the machine's going to be with web apps, right? But we don't have the machines on hand all the time to keep retesting. And software updates, browser updates, they affect that particular benchmark more than most. So yeah, you got to caveat it that, perhaps the numbers aren't exactly apples to apples, but lots of the notebooks got to go back, unfortunately.
It's also why you'll see a lot of our gaming benchmarks where we have a ton of results are from years old games, because that's, it's easier. You can't exactly go back to a laptop you had 3 years ago and test it on the game that just came out this year when you don't have that laptop anymore.
That's right.
But, to some extent, GPU compute is GPU compute, and you get some optimizations from one game to another. But overall trends, and if you look at enough games, you can get a pretty good sense regardless.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff for sure. Dragon Range breathes fire. I was talking with a couple of folks at AMD, and they were pretty proud of that thing, and I can see why. I mean, they were really chest thumping. They're like, this is a great mobile platform, especially, for gaming, especially. We're starting to get in. I've got an HP 14-inch thin and light, the Dragonfly Pro. That is AMD 7000 series powered as well, but a 15 watt. No, it might be. I think it's a U series. Might be 15 watts. I have to check it out. But it's one of the first lower power AMD Ryzen 7000 laptops we've gotten in. So I have to take a look at that. Be fun.
So a couple of quick questions and comments that popped up. Nevin's asking, is it the same Zen 4 architecture in desktop and mobile? It is with Dragon Range versus desktop and mobile.
Yep.
The oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry. I'm exhausted and I've been sick all weekend, everybody. The mid-range AMD 7000 series latest gen chips are slightly different and actually have more powerful graphics than Dragon Range, more powerful integrated graphics than Dragon Range. But Zen 4 is Zen 4 if we're talking this processor and the desktop. And then Nevin also says, Intel won't have an answer for that until Meteor Lake. I think you're right. I mean, unless someone comes out with just an insane cooler for a notebook that you can squeeze another 10, 20 watts out of for the CPU, maybe. And you know what? I'd have to make one more point about this particular notebook that I forgot to write about in the review, and I regret it. One of the things Asus did with this notebook to keep it as thin and light as it is and still have as much thermal headroom as it does is it uses liquid metal thermal paste for the CPU and GPU. Now that's awesome for heat transfer into the heatsink. It's not awesome if it leaks out or you ever have to replace it, because it's a pain to work with, and it's electrically conductive. So if you ever seen anybody work on a PS5 and they screw up the little foam pad around the die and the liquid metal gets on the PCB, It's just a mess. But hey, it works. ASUS has a lot of experience, but I wish I'd mentioned that in the review. I forgot.
All right, we should move. And thanks for mentioning that. Now, this is the HP Dragonfly Pro that has. Okay, there you go, right there. This has a Ryzen 7 7736U 15 watt with Radeon graphics on board. Stay tuned for that. We're running it through its paces now. Let's talk Ryzen 7 7800X3D before we're out of time, Marco.
People care about this?
What's that?
So people care about this?
Yeah.
Well, I would hope so. This is what we are calling the new, well, I should say the Gaming King returns. The King of Gaming returns. The Ryzen 7 7800X3D. Marco has dubbed it the Gaming King. There you go. It is a 8-core, 16-thread, highly optimized chip with 3D V-Cache for gamers. Tell us all about it, buddy.
So awesome processor, right? When the 7800X3D was announced, there was some hemming and hawing because AMD lopped 400 megahertz off the boost clock versus the 7700X. If you remember the 5800X3D, it was only like 200 megahertz slower than the 5800X. You still get that big gaming boost from the 3D V-Cache, but for apps that don't use the 3D V-Cache, lopping 400 megahertz off the chip is going to pull performance down versus the 7700X. However, AMD did a really good job fine-tuning the frequency voltage curve. And if you come check out the review, we have a ton of system benchmarks and graphics and gaming benchmarks. And what you'll see, the brandings is funny, right? If you read 7800X3D, you assume it's always higher up than a 7700X, right? It's not always the case. So if you're looking at some of the compute tests, it does trail the 7700X due to that clock speed deficiency, right? But with that cache and the optimized frequency voltage curve, it did win a handful of tests versus 7700X. Where does it fall overall? It's an 8-core, 16-thread chip. So if you look across all the productivity and creator benchmarks, it lands right around the other 8-core chips. Where the magic happens is with gaming, right? In all of the game tests except for one, it landed in first place versus everything. Keep in mind, we're talking about a $449 processor. So beat the 7950X 3D, beat the 7950X, beat the 13900K, 13900KS at $449 in all of the game tests except for one. And that translated into first place finishes even at 4K when the GPU was the bottleneck. So absolutely stellar gaming performance. Because of that high value and excellent gaming performance, you know, we put the headline in the new king of PC gaming. Stand by that. I think this is the chip to buy if you're building a PC just for PC gaming, because there's really no better value if you want the best performance per dollar in gaming, right? And it does that at a peak power, a peak system power. And I'll keep this in mind, I'm testing at the outlet. The system only pulled 177 watts. The same exact config with the 13900KS was over 400 watts. Now that's hundreds of additional watts of heat that you have to manage in the system. So, and power, right? Power's power. So theoretically you can get by with a lighter PSU and not quite as of exotic cooler, right? And still get the same performance. So really well-rounded process. The big caveat with it, however, is like essentially zero overclocking. With the 7000X3D series, AMD did enable PBO and curve optimizer, where that stuff wasn't available on the 5800X3D, but it did nothing on this chip, right? It's artificially limited to 50-50 megahertz, and you run into thermal junction. It's designed to hit its 89C TJ max temperature to maximize performance. So you'll hit that unless you have a really big cooler on it. So if you're a tinkerer, maybe you're not super psyched about it, but if you're a hardcore gamer and you don't have an unlimited budget, you got to really consider this chip.
So that badge there, that's not one we see too often. Well earned.
Nope.
See, I think it is, right? Here was why I decided that this deserves an editor's choice, right? you could test all the fastest chips, but there's the price premium for all the top of the line chips, and you have to kind of pick that slice where they're class leading, right? This is a chip that AMD says is the perfect gaming chip. It's targeted at gamers. It is affordably priced relative to the chips it's competing against. Intel said the 13900K is their premier gaming chip, right?
Yep.
Compared to the competitor, it's like almost half the price, right? It's hundreds of dollars less, and it won.
Mhm.
So for a gaming chip, I mean, it would be my choice today. Hence, I gave it the Editor's Choice Award.
I agree. I mean, full disclosure, I just bought the 13700K myself for the system I built. And I think for me and my particular usages, because I do a lot of the productivity stuff as well, I'm still happy with that choice. But if you are looking at just gaming, I'll recommend the 7800X3D hands down, and have been recommending it to my friends who have been asking about it today, because it makes a ton of sense for a lot of people, which means I hope they have a lot of stock, because good luck finding it.
Yeah, I know we're running late, but we have to turbo through some questions, right? We had David Brennan asking earlier about when will DDR5 mature, and he says DDR timings are horrible. It's not as mature as DDR4, obviously, right? But it's
the way it
only
works.
marginally more expensive at mainstream clock speeds. And yes, timings, if you're just looking at the spec sheet, are horrible, but it can often make up for the timing deficiencies with frequency. So bandwidth is vastly superior, right? And are you in a situation where your memory latency limit or memory bandwidth limit?
And it's the true latency, not the latency, cycle count that really matters for most workloads.
Right. Yeah, so I have no problem building a system with DDR5 today. Now, if you want the fastest DDR5, you're going to pay out the nose versus DDR4. But we're getting there. And there was something else I missed.
We've been around
David
10
Brennan,
nanosecond true latency since like DDR3. So
he also says no need to upgrade his 5950X. Depends what you do. If you're a gamer, it's a big upgrade. If you're not a gamer, nope. No, it's still a beautiful 16-core chip.
I mean, if you're gaming at 4K already, maybe not. I mean, yes, It's an advantage, but it's not the huge advantage you see at lower resolutions. But if you're pushing a 1080p, trying to hit 600 FPS in your esports title, then yeah, the X3D or the 7800 X3D is the way to go.
And now here's one you guys might have to chime in, because I'm drawing a blank on this. This is a good question. Nevin asking,
it is a good question.
The 7000 series still using first gen 3D V cache based on 6 nanometer?
I believe it is.
But what lithography is used for the processors? I don't remember. Can you mix?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You can mix. And I know AMD's in particular has made a point of saying that the lithography gains for memory and cache is not nearly as good as it is for compute.
Oh, so, thank God! Thank God, our buddy Steez is here. He has the exact answer. Thank you, sir, because I was drawing a blank. It's the second generation cache, still built on 7 nanometer process. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. So it's 7 nanometer. All right.
Beautiful. And I don't think I missed anything else.
No, I think that's it. There is a question here that's unrelated, but semi-related. Thoughts on 3070 Ti versus 4070 Ti? I mainly do ultra setting, 1080p gaming, 4K and 8K editing, a lot of CAD stuff.
Who's answering?
Do you already have the 3070 Ti, and is it performing for you? If it's already doing what you need, then there's not sense upgrading yet. But if you are running into cases where your 3070 Ti is letting you down, then yeah, an upgrade would make sense. Whether the 4070 Ti is going to be the best value is tough to say. If you do look at the AMD options, if AMD is an option for you, you do get a lot more VRAM with those that, as you're doing some of the production stuff, you may be more memory limited
for
with those.
CAD and 8K and 4K. Yep.
Yeah. So, you're going from 12 gigabytes to 24 with the XTX. So that's also a consideration. But if you are, if you need CUDA compute, then obviously you're going to be stuck with NVIDIA. So
can I interject some quick things too? If I've done testing with Blackmagic Raw, and the 4000 series does significantly outpace the 3000 series. If you're a gamer and want to take advantage of DLSS 3 with frame generation, 4070 Ti is the only way to go in that comparison. Yep. You also have the superior media engine on 4000 series with AV1, which is going to mean more going forward, especially if you're editing 4K and 8K video. AV1 may become an important thing to you. I see you're running dual GPUs. Definitely worth replacing with a single GPU. And then the final caveat is don't buy anything until next week, and you'll see why.
There you go. You can't tell them why.
Right.
So there you have it, folks. You gleaned some information. Good stuff, Marco. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
What information? Inside
tips. Well, no, it's always good. Be ready. I mean, you're talking days away from stuff. Good to know. But yes, I think that's sound advice. And we should probably wrap on that, folks. But before we do, let's send you a quick little shout out to the winner of our Asetek and MSI Liquid Cool Gaming PC giveaway. Alex, you lucky dog, you are getting a Liquid Cool Asetek Liquid Cool PC powered by MSI stuff. Lots of MSI stuff. Alex Van Sickler is his name. Is our winner. It's a Core i9 12900K processor, MSI Meg Core Liquid S360 all-in-one cooler, MSI Z690 motherboard, RTX 3090 from MSI, the Seahawk. Yes, liquid cooled Seahawk, and 32 gigs of G-Skill DDR5, 1 terabyte SSD, 12,000 watt PSU. I mean, dialed for sound. And you got a monitor and a mouse, and it's beautiful. And it was given away. And we have another one coming up. We have another giveaway coming up. That one's going out, actually going to get shipped out probably in the next couple of days. To Alex, congratulations, brother. We have another machine coming up, I believe, from Falcon Northwest. Can we say that? Yeah, we can say that.
Yeah, I think we're all set, ready to go as soon as we just hammer out the details of the timing.
An FNW Falcon Northwest machine will be given away shortly, and I think you're going to like it.
Yeah, if you hit Hot Hardware and look at our system reviews and you see the most recent Fragbox review, should give you a pretty good idea of what.
Pretty good idea. Yeah. Cool stuff. And then yes, tomorrow we are heading to scenic New Jersey to build a gaming PC with our friends at Main Gear. So stay tuned for that coverage. We're going to get a new factory tour. They've got some new digs down there. That'll be fun. We get to meet Wallace Santos and Ron Reed and the good boys at Main Gear that build machines with loving care, like race cars. Actually, they have a automotive kind of flow, and it's really a cool spot. So we're looking forward to that. Long drive, but we're gonna have fun with it. So there you go. I think that wraps us, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
And with that, we'll bid you adieu. But hit thumbs up and subscribe, please, if you would, so we notify you when we go live again. You can find us on the web at hothardware.com, twitter.com/hothardware, youtube.com/hothardware. Hit thumbs up, subscribe, join us. We're geeks, and we're the last of the independent publishers, it seems, these days. Kind of a dying breed, but we're thriving, actually. So go figure. Mm-hmm. And that about wraps it. And with that, I guess, Marco, why don't you say what I'm thinking?
Good night, everybody.